Retro Warriors episode 302. As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by resident old bastard, Chris Saturn.
I believe we established that I am an additional resident old bastard.
Additional resident. I'm not going to say that.
And in our new canon...
I said it the other way 300 times.
Right. In the new canon, we are both resident old bastards. Also, for some reason, you're a big fan of Galaxian and microcomputers.
Yeah, well, you know, it happens. It just happens to you. We don't have any housekeeping this week.
That happens.
Except go listen to Cinema Rogues,
Yes.
Board Game Barbarians. We have a Patreon, yada, 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 plug. You get it. You get the idea. You know what's happening. Listen, let me tell you about He-Man toys.
God damn it. You know, I saw you. Okay, first of all, let me preface this for everybody listening, because you're about to spend quite a bit of time talking about He-Man toys.
I'll limit it.
So a few days ago in the chat,
You give me one of those.
Yep. So a few days ago in the chat, you post a picture of a Skeletor
Yes.
toy that you got at the store, and the comment you posted was, "Oh my God, they had Skeletor at the store!" And
Yeah, I
then
was very excited.
and a few minutes later, somebody was like, "Well, you getting more?" And you said, "No, I think it's okay if I get one toy, so long as I don't fall down the rabbit hole of buying all of them."
Yeah.
And over the following days, you have bought several more and told us about the great lengths you are going to get as many of them as you can. So now I will let you tell us about your adventures in He-Man.
So it all started last year. After Andrew and I finished recording Talking Wizards for like 2-3 months, we would just shop for toys together on
the
voice
internet.
chat.
Nice.
And just be like, look at this cool thing. Look at that cool thing. But here's the thing. For people that don't do toys or don't collect toys or haven't collected toys or collectibles or anything like that, there's this weird line. So we'd find a toy and we'd be like, yeah, that's neat, but it kind of looks like a cheap piece of junk. And I don't really want a cheap piece of junk.
Right.
Because I want it to be cool and posable and look neat, you know? Because, I mean, really, as adults, you're buying toys because they're effectively art. It's you saying, this is a piece of art that I want to look at and view.
Right.
And so it was always either looks like a piece of cheap junk or that's too expensive. Because obviously they have extremely detailed, high quality, adult collector oriented toys, but they're expensive.
You remember the McFarlane toys?
Yeah, they still make them.
Do they? Holy shit.
Yeah, it's still an active line.
Wow.
And they're still making Spawn. Like, what?
What?
Anyway,
Why?
I know. I don't know.
Who's asking
At this
for
point,
that?
I'm like, you've made all of them. What more Spawns could you make?
Battle damage spawn?
Oh, yeah, so one we didn't do. We didn't do it.
Anyway.
And so we would shop for toys, but we'd never buy anything because it was either too expensive or it looked like a piece of junk.
Sure.
And so there's this sweet spot for toys where, because I'm just going to say it, I play with my toys. I play with toys. I'm a grown man. I play with my toys. I like my toys. It's fun.
I just want to say that I respect that you are referring to them as toys and not as action figures or some other terminology.
I think action figures is okay because action
it's
figure is
fine.
a type of toy. But people that are like, oh, it's a figure or it's a collectible. I'm like, it's an action figure. That's a toy.
Yeah.
So I really what I wanted was something that was decent quality that could be played with and enjoyed, not too expensive.
Yeah.
And something collectible because I like collecting things. I like the act of shopping for, acquiring, collecting, and curating collections of things, just in a general sense. And that's a hard combination in the toy world. And last year they announced a Masters of the Universe toy line. And they were like, all right, they're going to be $15 a pop, and they're going to be like this. And they're very high quality figures. They come with accessories. They come with a little comic book. They're on a nice card back. They're nice. They're nice action figures. They're cool toys, and they're durable toys because my daughter slams them around with me. Like I'll be playing, and I'm like, oh, He-Man's going to get you, and she'll go, no, you're not, and just full whole hog swing her whole body and slam her figure into mine.
Perfect.
And instantly they were unavailable and selling for crazy markup. And I just wrote it off because I was like, well, that was cheap and durable and good and cool looking.
Right.
But it wasn't collectible because I can't collect it because I can't buy it.
Right.
And I had just forgotten about it until I was in Target earlier this week. And I said, oh my God, they have He-Man and Skeletor. And then I come to find out that 1, they're widely available now. 2, they never stopped releasing them, because when they do these re-release of vintage toys,
right,
usually what they do is they do a few of them and then they're like, all right, we're done. You know, there's your main characters. Goodbye.
Right.
They're re-releasing like tons of them. Like shit that no one cares about. They're releasing Stinkor. They're re-releasing battle damaged He-Man and Skeletor. They re-released the Land Shark. Nobody knows what I'm saying anymore. They're just words.
Yeah.
But my point is, I've been collecting them, and yeah, I was going to buy the Skeletor, and then I was like, well, if I get Skeletor, I got to get He-Man. Got to have He-Man. I mean, that's okay.
Did they re-release Orko?
They did re-release Orko,
oh,
yes.
Man.
And he comes on a very cool little stand.
Nice.
And so I'm like, well, I got to have He-Man and Skeletor, because to get the power sword, the sword in the mythos, you have to get He-Man and Skeletor, and the swords go together to make one sword.
Right.
And I was like, well, I'll get He-Man. So I couldn't find He-Man at my local stores. They were out of stock. And so I ordered it off the internet.
Right.
And then I was at Walmart a couple days later getting groceries, and they had Battle Cat. And I was like, well, I have He-Man. He-Man's got to have Battle Cat, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, look how cool it is. He comes with the armor. It's removable. We'll get Battle Cat.
Oh, of course.
And then He-Man's got to have his friends, you know, Teela. And you can't have Teela without her dad, Man-at-Arms.
Yeah, of course.
And if you're going to get them, you got to get She-Ra. Duh. And you might as well get the Sky Sled, because that can work for both the bad guys and the good guys. And Skeletor doesn't have any friends. Yeah, and they got Beastman and Evil Lyn at the store, so I guess we'll get them. And Trapjaw, I guess I found him online, so I guess we got Trapjaw now. And so now I'm just like... my wife had one of those moments today where she walked by my desk and she goes, are these all new? Did you get these all this week? I go, yeah. But they have already seen a lot of play in my house, so that's fun.
That's good.
They're fun. They're if you like toys, or you liked He-Man toys when you were a kid, I recommend them. Like if you enjoy toys, they're good toys, and they're in the toy realm, they're pretty affordable for what you get, which is a good, durable toy that has multiple features, which is nice.
You know, all week as you've been describing this,
slowly descending into madness, you can say it. My
thought process has been, this is, I'm happy that he is so excited, but this is not at all something I care about at all. And then you said, yeah, they made Orko, and I was like, what, they made Orko?
And you're gonna get Orko, and you're gonna be like, well, he looks dumb without He-Man next to him.
I just pulled it up, and it's like $30 to $60. I'm like, no, I'm not gonna get Orko.
Oh no, that one. Give it a few weeks or a month or two, and it'll be in Walmart when you're getting groceries.
I'm not, because I don't walk to the toy aisle while I'm getting groceries.
You don't even go through the toy aisle?
I have not been through the toy aisle in years. I'll go through the electronics aisles, but I don't know. I don't ever go over to the toy area.
Let me tell you this. I'm 32 years old. I've never in my life entered a store that had a toy section and not gone to the toy section.
I continued to go to the toy section at least into my early to mid 20s. And then I remember one time I was at a Toys R Us, because I went there to figure out what video games they had on clearance. And I walked around through all the like action figure areas and, you know, the stuff that I used to really love when I was little. And I was like, I don't know what any of these fucking things are. And none of this appeals to me in the slightest. I think I am no longer interested in whatever they are making right now.
You panicked.
And I just stopped.
Let me tell you, you go in there now, it's Mario and they got Street Fighter Hot Wheels now. Like they got some good shit, man.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, there's Pokemon, yeah.
Are you going to continue this trend and go ahead and pick up some of the He-Man video games?
Are there any worth playing? Because let me tell you, I looked and I couldn't find. I was actually kind of shocked, because I was like, how is He-Man one of the most famous 80s pop culture, children's properties, never had a single good video game?
Well, let me explain in as few words as I can. You see, He-Man was made by Mattel, who also made the Mattel Intellivision.
Oh, no.
And there you go.
It just seems so obvious. Like, it's a man that kills named bad guys with a sword. It doesn't get easier than this.
Yeah,
video game companies.
Mattel made an Intellivision game based on it, and they ported it to the Atari and I think maybe the ColecoVision.
It was a GBA game.
Oh yeah, like 20 years later.
True.
There was eventually a GBA and PS2 game by TDK. I'm not gonna say either of them were good, but no. As a kid, Orko was my favorite, and I was always incredibly butthurt that we couldn't find the figure for him back then.
Yeah. Well, if you get groceries sometime soon, you wander through the toy aisle because you might get an Orko for $15.
The grocery stores I go to don't have toy aisles.
What the fuck's that? What are you doing with your life? I will say I have, because really what I'm doing, I'm catching up. I'm catching up to all the ones that have released so far, and then I'll just buy the couple that come out every month or whatever. And I get frustrated with, because a lot of websites, they're like, oh yes, we sell collectibles for adult collectors. Yeah. And I'm like, nah, man, I want toys. I don't even want you to show me the $400 Wolverine statuette. Right. Like, I'm not gonna buy that. Where are your toys?
Oh, man.
It's frustrating.
See, that's anytime that I go on Square Enix's website to look at all the Dragon Quest collectibles, I'm like, oh man, look, like they've got the entire cast of Dragon Quest 4 here. They're all $200 a piece. Yeah. I will not be buying that. And then I look at Amazon Japan, and there's just thousands of like weird slime collectibles for under $10.
Well, and that's what frustrates me is I feel like there should be this line of like, can you just be like, this is our toy category. This is I feel like $50 and under. Mm-hmm. They're toy. These are our toys.
Yeah.
And then after that, they're collectibles now. If you're paying $80, $90, $100, $3,000, $4,000 for whatever it is, okay, yeah, that's a collectible. But I don't even it waters down what I'm trying to find, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Bottom line, the Masters Universe figures are really cool, and they're a lot better than a lot of the nostalgia grab. There's this one company that puts out so many of these nostalgia grab figures. It's called Reaction is the company name. And you'll know them if you see them. Mm-hmm. It's just this very plain card back. They print whatever artwork is appropriate to whatever figure they have in it. Right. And all the figures look the fucking same. The knees don't bend, the legs don't bend. They just have arms that stick straight up, and they're just little crappy figures.
Yeah.
And they sell them. You see them all over the place, and those things, man, they are pieces of junk, and they fucking cost as much as my He-Man that has like 15 points of articulation and a sword and armor and cool stuff, you know. Although my daughter was flabbergasted when I ripped off Skeletor's legs and attached them to He-Man. She was like, "Oh my God, you can do that!" and started ripping them all into pieces.
Back in late '97 or early '98, I was on a band trip in high school, and we stopped. We were in Corpus Christi. We stopped at a mall, and there was a Walden Software there. And they had the box set of Final Fantasy VII action figures.
Nice.
They had like 5 characters all in one set.
Yeah, and so I had 2 or 3 of those.
I had to pick it up. They're all in one box. It was Cloud and Barrett and Tifa and Aerith and someone else. I can't remember who the last one was.
Vincent in that set?
No, he was sold separately. Vincent and Sephiroth I got separately, but it might have been a Red 13 in there. So either way, we eventually learned that all of their limbs and heads were removable and their torsos. Yes. And then we realized that the little piece that connected Cloud's torso to his body was the same piece or the same size of the piece as Barrett's hand. So we would just have like Cloud's torso going into Barrett's wrist, and it was we did all kinds of dumb things with that shit.
Yeah. Anyway, I said I wasn't going to talk for a long time, and I would limit it, and we're at like 15 minutes of toy talk.
So I had a feeling that was going to happen.
Look forward to more of this on Talking Wizards, I'm sure.
I bet. No, I'm still going through Yakuza 5. I slowed down a little bit because I'm starting to reach that point to where anytime that I'm not playing the game, I'm like, man, I've been playing a lot of Yakuza. Maybe I need to slow down. And then anytime I pick it up, I'm like, this is a completely different genre of game as what I was playing the last time I picked up this game. Yeah. How am I tired of this? It's never the same game.
Yeah. I've reached this point with Like a Dragon where I'm like, why will I ever buy another game? It's got a kart racer, an RPG. It's got an arcade that I can go play Fantasy Zone. Like this, I don't need an Xbox. I just need Like a Dragon. This is my platform. Right. I'll just live in this.
Yeah, so in the Club Sega and Yakuza 5 is Taiko no Tetsujin, which is Bandai Namco's drum rhythm arcade game.
Oh, yeah.
Which is weird that
Drum Master.
Yeah, it's not a Sega arcade game. It's a Bandai Namco arcade game, which is weird. But I'll take it. It's a fun game, and I've played some of it like back on PS2 when it was called Taiko Drum Master. I played some of it then, and the new one on Switch, which is just called Taiko no Tetsujin Worldwide. I haven't picked that one up yet, but I'm thinking about it now because after playing it in Yakuza 5, I'm like, oh man, I really enjoy this game. I want to get into it. But I realized that the best part of it is playing this arcade game and having Kiryu comment over it the whole time. Because like I'll just be like drumming along, and then it gets to the thing where you have to do a drum roll, and like the whole time you're doing the drum roll, Kiryu's like, and it's just so dumb. And now I've gotten to the next point in the game, the third act, which without revealing any story or anything, is suddenly focused on a teen pop idol. And so all of the random battles have been replaced with dance battles, and the entire game has become a rhythm game now.
Yes.
And I don't know what's going on.
I need more of this.
But yeah, I'm still enjoying it, but I am starting to drag a little bit just because it is feeling pretty samey. The next one will be Yakuza 0, which everybody tells me is the best one. So I am hoping that picks me back up and pushes me through the rest of the franchise.
Yeah.
I did play some of the Mario 64 Plus that we talked about last week.
Oh, it's so good.
I really appreciate the additions that they made to it. I especially appreciate the no lives mode, where you just have infinite lives and you don't have to worry about it. However, it turns what was the lives counter into a deaths counter. So you get you get to see how bad you are. Yeah. And that's unfortunate. It makes me very sad. You don't need a
computer to tell you that.
Right? I already knew how bad I was. I don't need you keeping count. But since I was playing a 3D platformer anyway, I decided to actually open up and try out Balan Wonderworld, which is just getting just torn apart in the press.
Full on shit on, because I was excited for it, and then I was like, it's full price, I'll wait for reviews, and the reviews were like, no.
Yeah, it's being eviscerated in the press. I gotta say, if it was a $30 game, I would immediately recommend it. I'd be like, this is a decent budget priced game. As a full priced game, it feels like something that should have released on the GameCube.
I got news for you. It's going to be a budget price game pretty quick here.
Oh yeah, pretty soon. I'm glad I used some credit to get it. No, it's okay. Like the presentation is really neat. It looks great in 4K on my Series X.
I mean, it's really just Knights again, isn't it?
No, it's.
Oh really?
No,
it was very much billed as like this is Knights.
Yeah, like the weird jester character, whatever it is, very much acts like Knights the character, and there is a bonus game you can encounter in each world that plays like Knights did, but the actual gameplay itself is just it's a 3D platformer. You find costumes or transformations or something, and you turn into these little monster things. And each monster thing has 2 buttons, and that's your 2 buttons until you turn into something else. And sometimes one of them is jump, which is important in a platformer. But for many of them, that is not one of the
Commando
buttons.
Saturn.
What's
you got by just fine.
Right. One of them, you remember those plant creatures that you could turn into in Mario Odyssey where their legs would stretch real tall?
Yeah.
One of them is basically that. Mm-hmm. And he has that instead of jump, which I believe is the same thing in Mario Odyssey. But a couple of them just can't jump. And in a platformer, that makes things really awkward.
That's weird.
But no, it's okay. I would give it a solid meh. If you saw it for under $30, it'd be worth checking out, but I wouldn't pay $60 for it.
Let's knock some news out.
Yeah.
First up, Epic is reportedly burning through hundreds of millions of dollars to get exclusives for the EGS.
Yeah.
And Sony has invested another $200 million into the company.
And also Epic said that they are not hurting spending hundreds of millions of dollars.
Oh, I can't imagine they would.
So I guess they're really making that Fortnite money.
They're making they're making that kind of money where you don't even think about how much money they make because it's a pointless gesture at that point. Like that like Amazon level money where you're like, who even cares how much money they make? They have literally anything they would ever want to do, they can do. So it doesn't matter. When
Epic files their taxes, their income, they just write gobs.
Yeah, they just write all of it. The original Game Boy Color Shantae game is coming to Switch this month, which is neat. Cool. That's an extremely rare and hard to find game, heavily bootlegged.
Well, it was also reprinted by a limited run.
LRG did a release of it. It's very much a coveted game.
And that hurts me every time because it sat new and unpurchased on my shelf at my game store for years when I worked there. And it was down to $15 new, and I almost bought it many times.
So many high dollar games now were bargain bin junk
right
in their day. Fans mod the Typing of the Dead Overkill with some of the best questions from Yahoo Answers.
I love the fan mods for Typing of the Dead Overkill. It gives that game infinite replayability. It's just amazing.
Players reporting that PS3 games are no longer able to find or download their update patches from the PSN. Sony, come on, man.
Sony really,
some amount of slack.
Hates game preservationists.
Well, you could just stop at game. They hate games.
That's true.
In general, obviously. I mean, they've murdered thousands of them.
Right.
So, it's a little more.
Fucking Sony.
Preservation expert shows that the PS4 will refuse to play games offline if the CMOS battery dies.
God damn it, Sony.
Excuse me? I'm just going to sell my PS4. I was one of those, I'm just going to keep it in the top of a closet, and one day I'll pull it out and want to play it. But now that I know it's just going to be a fucking doorstop.
Yeah, so what they discovered is that when it tries to communicate with the trophy server and it can't find the trophy server, and then it can't confirm whether or not your date or time are correct, it refuses to start a game. If it can confirm one of those two things, then it will play the game. So if you replace your CMOS battery, get online, connect to PSN once, take it back offline, then it is fine until your battery dies again.
God damn it.
But if your battery dies, say after PSN for PS4 goes down,
it's just gone.
It's probably just gone.
I can't.
That's so frustrating.
It's frustrating because it makes me think like I want to get rid of my PS4 stuff now because I don't want it to just be a pile of useless trash.
Granted,
in a few years.
I am 100% certain that fan modders will release custom firmware for the PS4 that'll get around this.
I sure hope.
I'm certain that will happen, but the fact that we have to rely on the piracy and fan modding community for something like that to happen is disappointing at the very least.
And there's also the question of how difficult will the mod be?
Right.
How difficult will it be to get it just literally working for a thing I paid money for?
Well, don't worry. I mean, somebody will eventually find a way to make it easy, just like they did on the PS1 25 years later.
That's all it took.
Yeah.
Nintendo had another Indie World Showcase, which they had some games. Mm-hmm. It wasn't amazing. It included a surprise announcement.
It was like that description for the Thomas Wave game. This is a game.
Yeah, it did include a surprise announcement of Getsu Fumadin, Undying Moon, which is a roguelike sequel to a 1987 Famicom game from Konami, as well as the first footage of the upcoming House of the Dead remake. And then they did a sizzle reel at the end and put a bunch of things in it.
Well, that's where House of the Dead was. It was in the sizzle reel at the end.
Yeah, Fez was in the sizzle reel. There were several. They were just like, "There's a couple games, bye," and then
right, and several of the games that were properly announced and showcased seemed fine, but not very exciting. And meanwhile, you have House of the Dead just camped out at the end there. I would have wanted to see more of that.
I really liked the look of that Getsu Fumiden game. Visually, it reminded me a lot of Muramasa, which I adore that game.
Nice.
Blizzard has added RPM Racing and The Lost Vikings 2 to Blizzard Arcade Collection.
Which, if you remember, was one of my big complaints about it, that those two games weren't there. So I am happy to have had those added to my copy of the game.
Nintendo has issued a copyright strike against a vendor selling a Bowser-themed adult novelty / toy.
We know what it is. We're just
Here's my thing.
Yes, sir.
If Nintendo has never explicitly drawn Bowser's dick, then can they say that they have a copyright to it?
Okay, so they also own the copyright on the Mario porn.
Do they?
Yeah, they purchased the rights to the Super Hornio brothers.
I did not know that.
Yeah, they own that movie now.
But they've never depicted Bowser's genitalia. So how do they own a copyright to it?
I don't know. They just do. So when Super Hornio Brothers came out, they tried to file a trademark dispute, but the porn company was like, no, we're going to fight this. So they bought the rights to the movie just to prevent it from ever being distributed.
No.
They've done the same with a ton of porn URLs based on Nintendo franchises.
Right.
Like whenever somebody makes a porn parody site of a Nintendo franchise, Nintendo will then purchase that URL from them for some undisclosed amount of money just to close it down. So this is on brand for Nintendo to go after this.
You know, as much as they're trying to shut down Nintendo-themed pornography on the internet, I have news for them. I have the internet, and they are not slowing anything down.
No, it's all still out there.
Puzzle Bobble VR Vacation Odyssey announced for the Oculus Quest, and RE4 VR trailer also shown exclusive to the Oculus Quest 2.
You know, I got to say, as somebody who is not super interested in VR, but is willing to look into it, it's doing nothing for me that stuff is... so many things are being exclusive to one platform or the other in an already small market. And Resident Evil 4 especially is not just exclusive to Oculus, it's exclusive to specifically the Oculus Quest 2.
Now, I would assume that that's because I don't know that the first Oculus could handle that game.
Probably, yeah.
I really don't think it could.
Right.
But yeah, it's one of those things where like the market started out fragmented. And like that's annoying.
And it's already a small market, and to have a small market fragmented makes it very difficult to want to invest in it.
Rumors crop up about several interested parties attempting to buy Square Enix. Square Enix quickly shot down those rumors.
Did you read their press release?
No, I didn't.
Oh, he was very to the point. He was like, "We are not selling. We are not for sale, and we are not interested in entertaining any of these options."
Yeah,
it was very clear.
Jeez. Square Enix then announced more Saga remasters coming after Saga Frontier,
which is good news for Saga fans. I would like to see a re-release of the DS remasters of the Game Boy Saga games, because those are really good and only available in Japan.
Yeah. Shadow Man remaster released. If you want that,
that was a N64 PS1 Dreamcast game,
and I had that dude on the front looking all 90s.
Yeah, it was a very voodoo themed game,
who I assume was Shadow Man.
I believe so.
I didn't play the game.
I didn't play it myself. I mostly remember the game for that marketing promotion that Acclaim held for the second game, where they would pay for your loved one's funeral if you put a permanent ad for the game on their tombstone.
What?
Acclaim. It was just an Acclaim kind of thing.
Oh, God.
Somebody out there has a tombstone that permanently says Shadow Man 2 Weekend Coming on it.
Saturn, I want to make it very clear that if someone ever offers you a lot of money for desecrating my grave, you take that money, because I won't care. I won't be around for it.
Awesome. I appreciate that. I'll do it.
Mario Kart 8 is now the best-selling racing game in United States history, according to IGN. So,
and now, did you read this article?
No.
So I'm not so like like I believe it could be. I don't want to doubt that outright. But the way that it was phrased came off as a little fuzzy. Like it felt like there was a lot of estimation involved in their math.
Mario Kart 8 is the best-selling racing game in U.S. history with the number 8 and the word Mario in the title. So there you go. You got it.
Yeah. They had combined sales for the Wii U and Switch version, which was fine, whatever. I mean, granted, plenty of people like myself double-dipped, so I don't... that still counts, though.
Yeah.
But then they also were going based on the worldwide sales for the game and then taking a percentage of that for what the U.S. sales would have been based on estimations, which is it's probably pretty close to accurate, but I'm not sure how definitively accurate it is.
It's one of those things where they could have ended up at the right answer.
Right. But it just felt a little wishy-washy the way they wrote it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into the topic at hand. This week we're talking the Sega and Microsoft connection, which is the sequel to the song The Rainbow Connection. We wrote it and we're going to sing it for you.
It's also the sequel to the movie The French Connection.
Yeah, it's a double sequel. It's doing double duty. So this episode was my idea.
Speaking of wishy-washy,
I made Saturn do it for me.
Yeah.
But there have been some pretty well documented connections between Sega and Microsoft over the years.
Right.
A lot of talk of the Xbox being the Dreamcast 2.
And there's been rumors lately of a potential acquisition there.
Yes. So really, we just kind of want to go over the actual connection that exists and then just wildly speculate until we hit time is basically our goal here.
Perfect.
Because there are really
we're experts.
There are some real tangential realistic connections between Sega and Microsoft.
Yes.
There is a lot more of a relationship there than probably a lot of people think about or realize.
Certainly more than you might think at the surface level anyway.
Because when the, hey, what if Microsoft buys Sega thing came up, last year is when the frenzy started on that one.
Yeah.
It got me thinking, and I think the reason it's such a fun rumor is that it makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways.
Right.
Which we'll get into later on.
Sure.
But yeah, that's why we ended up where we are.
Yeah.
This is also a kind of more of a let's make fun speculations about Microsoft and Sega than it is actual factual speculation about the future of these two companies.
Right.
We are not legal counsel. We have no insider knowledge,
right.
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And I swear, if Satya Nadella bought Sega between the time that we record this and the time that it gets posted, I'm going to be very sad. Because that would have been useful information for this episode.
Yeah. Saturn said he was going to email him and ask if that was going to happen, just so we would know.
I didn't send the email.
Oh, damn.
I assumed that I would get caught in his spam filter.
Yeah.
Because he uses Outlook.
If you want to use his Outlook, I don't think it's going to get caught in any filters.
Oh.
In my experience. If you would regale us with the pre-Xbox Sega Microsoft relationship that did exist, and this is the interesting part for me, because obviously there's the post-Xbox Sega Microsoft collection, but it goes a lot deeper than that.
So the earliest time that there was any kind of real interaction, and this is kind of fuzzy because I don't know exactly how much Microsoft would have actually been involved, but as far back as 1995, Sega founded Sega PC, which was their division to make computer versions of their games, which was weird and new at the time, especially since Nintendo sure as hell wasn't going to publish any of their games on anything else.
Right. You still got Mario on DOS, but
not from Nintendo. And Sega specifically sought out to support Windows 95. That was their goal. There was not Mac ports initially. Eventually they would release some stuff on Mac, but initially it was just Windows 95. And it was alongside the Sega Saturn, which had fairly recently come out at that point. So they had this two-pronged approach where they would support PC and the Saturn simultaneously. And a bunch of Genesis or Mega Drive, as well as Sega CD and Saturn games, ended up getting ported to PC under the Sega PC label from around 1995 into the 2000s. And you saw a lot of their bigger franchises that were previously exclusive to their hardware get ports on Windows 95 or 98 during this era. Most importantly, you saw a bunch of Sonic games. You saw Sonic CD, Sonic 3 and Knuckles, Sonic 3D Blast, and Sonic R, that weird racing game on the Saturn. Panzer Dragoon got a Windows port, Bug, Baku Baku, Daytona USA, Sega Rally, Virtua Cop, House of the Dead. There were some others as well, but those are games that were known as big first-party games on those platforms.
Right.
And at the time, that seemed so weird that first-party console games were getting a release on anything else, and for it to be on PC seemed particularly weird.
Yeah.
In 2000, the division that they had previously formed as Sega PC would be merged into Smilebit, which was a team that ended up working on a lot of Sega's early Xbox exclusive games, probably because they already had experience with DirectX and with the Windows kernel, which is what the Xbox would go on to use.
Yeah, I looked up Smilebit, and it was originally from CS1. Which was staff that worked on Panzer Dragoon, sports games, and their PC conversion stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And then two people, Shunarai and Takayuki Kawagoe.
Close enough.
Pretty sure I got it. We're in charge of Smilebit.
Yep.
Shunarai's previous work included Virtual Cop 2, Virtua Fighter 2, Last Bronx, Virtual On, and then he was a producer on a whole bunch of stuff.
Right.
Takayuki Kawagoe was mostly on the marketing side of games.
Right.
And previous credits included marketing and promotion on Christmas Nights, Riglord Saga 2, and Clockwork Knight.
I love Clockwork Knight. I don't care what anybody says.
You're allowed to love it.
I love it.
But just so you have some background on what went into forming Smilebit.
Yeah. The PC conversion part of that team would eventually get moved into Amusement Vision, and then of course everything else got absorbed back into Sega after the Sammy merger. So it's
it all collapsed in.
Exactly. And despite the fact that they did dissolve that dedicated team in 2000, they did keep using the Sega PC name for a number of years there for their PC games. And I was seeing games that still had the Sega PC logo on them up till 2006.
Oh, wow.
Which is weird because by then it was just Sega. They had been publishing on everything. There was no reason for them to have a dedicated name for PC.
Now, it is... and developing for PC is kind of one of those things where it's like, yes, you're developing for Microsoft platform, but it's also, especially in the later 90s when it the PC market very much stabilized and homogenized a lot.
Yeah.
It didn't so much feel like you were developing for a Microsoft platform. It was just like you're putting it on computer. That's what computer is.
Yeah, and that's especially near the end there because they were also porting to Mac as well. So it was really just a computer division by that point. But you can see kind of the start of that relationship because it was a team that was dedicated to Windows 95 and 98. So they were dedicated to DirectX. They knew the Windows kernel, and it feels like that did help them when they were working on Xbox stuff later on.
Right. But then we get the Dreamcast with its wonderful little Windows CE logo on the front of the system.
Yeah. It was a partnership that they had during the development of the Dreamcast. Sega and Microsoft worked together to build that custom port of Windows CE and DirectX for the Sega Dreamcast. And though it is, like you said, on the front of the console itself, it's not built into the console.
Right.
They just ported it to the console. It's actually on the disk of any game that runs off of Windows CE. So those games are running kind of a miniaturized Windows kernel in order to run the game itself.
Right. It was really kind of it feels more like a compatibility layer type thing.
Exactly.
Is really what it is.
Yeah, these days it would just as easily be described as a game engine. It's running Windows CE on Dreamcast is just as much as running Unreal Engine on PS4. It's just.
But obviously, Sega and Microsoft has some kind of agreeable relationship for them to be putting a Windows logo on the front of their new system.
Right, and again, it did have a DirectX API ported to the Dreamcast. It also supported Windows 98 DLL files ported to the Dreamcast. So companies that already had a PC port of a game could really easily convert it to the Dreamcast. The Dreamcast version of Resident Evil 2 is the PC version of Resident Evil 2, just shifted over to the Dreamcast, to the point to where it even has some of the same glitches and built-in debugging cheat codes as the PC version that aren't on any of the other console ports of the game.
Yeah.
But despite that, most developers still preferred to use Sega's dedicated tools.
Shocking.
Right. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. There were, however, more than 75 games released on the system that used Windows CE as a base, including some of Sega's own games. You have Virtua Cop 2, Sega Rally 2, and 100 Swords, which was developed by Smilebit, who we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
So they were willing to use it, and it was at least an early collaboration between Sega and Microsoft there.
Right. And then that dovetails us into the Xbox era.
Right. And that's when Microsoft really wanted to make an impact in gaming.
Yeah. Yeah. So when the Xbox era is this is kind of the delineation. This is where people are like, oh yeah, there really seems to be something here more than just two companies that are agreeable to one another at this point.
And granted, from an outsider perspective, when this was happening, it was hard to specifically see this correlation because Sega was also making exclusive games on GameCube, on PS2. So it was hard to see if there was anything different with any of them. But looking back, there are some things. So I found an interview with the former VP of Windows Sales, Joachim Kempen, and he said that Microsoft had considered purchasing Sega instead of making an Xbox. They were just going to support the Dreamcast and help it at market. However, they didn't think that Sega was in a strong enough position to go up against Sony and Nintendo. And
seeing as how they just failed to go up against Sony and Nintendo.
Yeah, I mean, well, this was before the Dreamcast had failed at this point. This was pre PS2 launch.
And the Dreamcast did have a tremendously successful launch.
Yes. So there was a moment there when Sega could have done something, but they did predict correctly that they were not going to be able to hold up against the PS2.
Right.
During the development of the Xbox, Sega's chairman, Isao Okawa, had spoken with Microsoft CEO Bill Gates regarding compatibility with Dreamcast games on the Xbox. And apparently a deal was nearly made, and it fell through because Microsoft was unwilling to implement SegaNet. They insisted that the games either had to work on Xbox Live or could not have online play, and that was apparently a deal breaker for Sega.
Which, Grant, I could see that being I could see Microsoft doubling down on that. Like, no, we're doing this online thing. We don't want to have two online services on our platform.
Exactly.
That's confusing. And then they went and named it the Xbox One and the Series S. So I don't really know when they decided to start confusing people.
Yeah, they eventually embraced the confusion.
But it makes sense then. But God, that would have been so crazy if the Xbox, like, I just play your Dreamcast games on it.
Right? That would have been...
Just put them right in.
That would have been a huge selling point for it too early on, because there was already a ton of great Dreamcast games on the market, and it could have helped it stand up against the PS2 a little bit there early on.
Let's talk, and this is already getting a little, I don't want to say in the weeds, but speculative.
Yeah.
But there is a very direct heritage from the Dreamcast controller to the Xbox controller.
I would say there's a very direct heritage from the Saturn 3D controller to the Xbox controller.
Oh boy.
Like, if you look at the Saturn 3D controller, the one that came with Knights, and then you look at the Dreamcast controller, you can see where one led to the other. Then if you look at the Dreamcast controller into the Xbox controller, you can see where one led into the other. Yeah. And it just feels like it is part of that same family.
Yeah, for sure. It's important to point out that obviously they share a button layout.
Right.
They share the same button colors, but they're swapped around.
Right. The fact that the button names are in the same position as on the Dreamcast is weird, because when the Dreamcast came out, I was like, who puts A on the bottom? This is weird and dumb. Why is B on the right? None of this makes sense. And then the Xbox came out with literally the same button layout.
And it seems not that weird to us because it feels so like that's just the button layout. Of course that's the button layout. It's like there's the button layout, TM, and then there's Sony and Nintendo's things.
Right. Because it's not just Microsoft that uses it now, because Apple was using it on their MFi controllers, and most off-brand mobile and PC controllers use that same Xbox Dreamcast button layout now. It's just become the generic, the standard. Hell, the Stadia controller uses it. I mean,
but at the time, to release a system that had the exact same button naming and layout,
it was just very strange.
Very weird.
Yeah,
for the Xbox to have that.
It also had the same number of triggers on it, and it had the analog stick above the D-pad, just like on the Saturn 3D controller and the Dreamcast controller. So it felt very weird. And also the Xbox controller, the original Xbox controller, had those two memory card slots in the back of the controller, just like a Dreamcast controller does. And I saw some people speculating online that if they wanted to make it VMU compatible, all they would have to do is take away that giant Xbox Jewel sticker on the front of the controller and put a window there instead. And it would theoretically be designed for a VMU instead of the Xbox memory card.
Which that does track, because Microsoft did put a big fucking Xbox logo on their controller. I mean, it's an enormous logo.
It's huge.
Most of the controller is a logo.
And it's a big controller.
It's very weird. And even on the S, the S model controller, it was still a pretty big emblem.
Yeah, it was not nearly as big as the original, but still larger than what you would see on other consoles.
Yeah.
And still about the size of the VMU screen, too.
Yeah, I feel like it is not speculative to say that there is a direct heritage.
Right. At the very least, you have to say Microsoft was inspired by the Dreamcast controller pretty heavily. But I have to assume that it's in large part due to those talks with Sega about potentially making the system compatible with Dreamcast games. Therefore, they wanted a controller that could be compatible with Dreamcast games. So I feel like maybe that had something to do with it.
Definitely. For sure.
Right. Fortunately, they didn't put the cord at the bottom of the controller.
Oh my God. Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Right.
Although they did introduce one of my favorite features of any controller, which is the breakaway controller cable.
That's true. I fucking love that thing. Those breakaways.
Every controller needs a breakaway cable. All of them for all of time.
Yeah. Well, if they have a cord.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which, fortunately, these days, just about none of them do anyway. So
yeah, but it does continue. March 30th, 2001, at the Tokyo Game Show, Sega of America president and COO Peter Moore, and then head of Xbox Robbie Bach announced a partnership between Sega and Microsoft to publish 11 exclusive games for the Xbox. The day before Sega confirmed the discontinuation of the Dreamcast.
Man, that was a weird news day. Just the idea of what Sega's making games for somebody. Is the Dreamcast dead? Is the Dreamcast dying?
Yeah, it is.
And then there was almost a full day of people on the internet being, the Dreamcast is fine. Don't listen to these rumors. And then the next day they're like, no, it's dead. It's dead. It's super dead.
Yeah. They did not have any Sega titles ready at the November 2001 launch of the Xbox, but Sega did release 17 titles on the Xbox in 2002.
Yeah, that's a good number.
That's a shitload of games.
Right? In 1 year?
Including Jet Set Radio Future, developed by Smilebit, Gun Valkyrie, developed by Smilebit, Crazy Taxi 3 High Roller, Toe Jam and Earl 3 Mission to Earth, House of the Dead 3, Panzer Dragoon Orta, also developed by Smilebit.
Yeah.
These were... aside from maybe a couple of them, really big Xbox titles.
Yeah. The ones that I would say were not big were Crazy Taxi and Toe Jam and Earl.
Yeah, Crazy Taxi 3 did not make any waves at all.
And sadly, neither did Toe Jam and Earl 3. It was an interesting game, but designed poorly.
Yeah. So these were big Sega games.
Yeah.
These were direct sequels to Dreamcast games.
Or Saturn games in the case of Panzer
Saturn
Dragoon.
games in the case of Panzer. And Panzer was, I remember Panzer being a big title for the
Yes.
Xbox. I feel like Panzer was probably bigger than any of the other titles we had listed here, at the time anyway.
Right. Yeah, it was one of the things that pushed me into buying an Xbox was, holy shit, there's a new Panzer Dragoon.
It was the first time I'd heard of Panzer Dragoon. I was like, a what in the what now? What's an Orta? And then I didn't play it. But I have it now.
Yay.
January of 2003, Peter Moore left Sega to join Microsoft as the head of the Xbox division. It's unknown if he had any Sega tattoos that he had to cover up when changing teams, but there he was, the big
Peter Moore.
Sega guy, Sega of America president, moving to Xbox.
Yeah.
Xbox has a whole bunch of Sega games developed first party for it.
Yeah, I mean, this was the guy who introduced the Dreamcast, who helped it succeed in America, and then also killed the Dreamcast. He was the one who had to make the call. For some reason, when it came time to, will we discontinue the Dreamcast? Will we fire our entire hardware development team? Sega of Japan said, Peter, you decide.
You do it. Yeah, that's great.
And
no, we don't want you to get a tattoo of it. Why do you keep asking us that? What a weird thing to ask. No company would ever have you display a tattoo for them. Halo 2.
Yeah. And GTA 4.
But
yeah, he went straight from Sega, where he was Mr. Dreamcast, to Microsoft, where he became Mr. Xbox for several years there.
Yes.
And then he went off to EA and then some other thing.
Sega supported the Xbox 360 and took advantage of Xbox Live Arcade to port a lot of Genesis and Mega Drive games to the 360.
As well as Saturn and Dreamcast games.
Yeah, that did not receive PS3 ports. Mm-hmm. And when Microsoft lifted the upper size limit on XBLA titles, that's when they started porting Saturn and Dreamcast games.
Right.
And because of the backward compatible nature of the Xbox 360, all of a sudden it meant that you got a whole lot of Sega games from all of Sega's history available on the Xbox 360.
And a lot of them continue to be available on the Xbox One and the Series S and X because they are continuing to be backwards compatible.
Absolutely, they will. But let's get into wild internet speculation.
Yes. So the internet thinks that Microsoft is going to buy Sega.
Yes, they do think that.
Not all of the internet, but enough of it to make noise.
And it's not a new rumor.
No,
it's something that
I've been hearing that rumor since the Dreamcast was discontinued. Because again, they announced Xbox support the day before they canceled the Dreamcast. So people immediately were like, "Oh, is Microsoft going to buy Sega?"
Microsoft buying ZeniMax, it was a big deal, but I think it was a big deal because, and the reason it has fueled the Sega thing so much more than them buying a different company is, to me, and this is just me speaking and speculating again wildly. Yeah. To me, Microsoft buying ZeniMax is Microsoft buying Doom. Right. And Microsoft buying Doom is Microsoft buying the Windows game. Doom for so long was like it to me, in my mind, always went hand in hand with Windows. I mean, I know it was on DOS and it came out on DOS.
And for a long time, Morrowind was the Xbox game for me.
True. Yeah, also true. And that's a good point. And them buying it, it almost feels like they were basically buying what already kind of felt like a weird second party company to begin with.
Right.
You know?
And let's not forget, you mentioned that Doom was also on DOS. DOS was also Microsoft. Right,
true. Obviously, DOS was still Microsoft.
Right.
But DOS was... Every copy of Windows I ever had to today, every Windows machine I have has Doom on it. So let's break it down then, and see how we think this would play out.
Yeah, if it were to ever happen, this is purely speculative.
So first up, how would Microsoft benefit? Obviously, Sega titles are still very popular. Sega's video game property-wise, Sonic is not a very big deal anymore, but
not as
their
much
properties
as it used to be.
are.
Yes.
They're Yakuza, and they have all those Atlas games under their belt. They've got basically a lock on PC strategy games. If it's not Paradox, it's Sega with Total War.
Right.
It would give them a presence in Japan. Sega is very popular in Japan, and
Xbox is not.
And Microsoft wants that.
They want Japan so hard.
They want that slice of the pie so bad, and they cannot fucking get it. Sega's brand recognition could help push Game Pass in Japan if all of a sudden, hey, you've got every Sega game that we have available on the platform on Game Pass. That's a gargantuan boost in the titles on at least double the amount of games on Game Pass.
Yeah.
But also being able to stream to mobile devices in Japan is a big deal.
Right. Because even if they can't sell a bunch of Xbox One or Xbox Series X consoles in Japan, if they can at least get Japan to start streaming Game Pass on their phones, that's still revenue for Microsoft. They want that. And being able to say, hey, we have all of Sega's games on here would definitely help that.
Atlas really would be a massive win for Microsoft. Microsoft has no JRPGs at all under their umbrella.
Right.
And Atlas
they barely have any JRPGs on the Xbox.
True. And Atlas makes Persona.
Yes. And Shin Megami Tensei and a lot of other things.
And further pushing rumors, Persona 4 Golden just came out on PC, which PC is a Windows platform or a Microsoft platform.
Yeah.
Sega seems really excited about it, and I would not be shocked if we saw Persona 5 coming to Windows.
Right. We just saw Persona 5 Strikers on PC as well.
Yeah, also came out on PC. So there seems to be a relationship there, and a desire from both sides.
Yeah. Now, we haven't seen any push of Atlas games towards the Xbox. I'm not sure if we would see that unless there was an acquisition.
True.
But, man, the Xbox could use it real bad.
That'd be nice. How Sega would benefit is video game sales are up. They're doing good in the video game department, but Sega Sammy is reporting losses, big losses with their arcade and amusement business, which they're cutting back on, as we reported previously on the show, but they seem to not want to do that because, like we talked about last episode, they came from pachinko and patchy slots. That's
who they were,
and they seem reluctant to let it go.
Yeah.
The closure of several Club Sega arcades around Japan has left Sega Sammy with fewer sources of income.
Right.
And obviously, Sammy would get a humongous stack of Microsoft money.
Just a giant stack of money.
They just sit it in the big bag with a cash sign on the front. So, I mean, the benefit there is...
So when Microsoft gives you a bag of money, instead of just a dollar sign on it, does it say M and then a dollar sign like all the idiots on the internet?
It has to.
Okay.
If you go to any Linux forum, you'll see Microsoft spelled with a cash sign.
Yes.
Almost immediately.
And sometimes it's just abbreviated as M dollar sign.
So, yeah, I mean, obviously, Sega Sammy... The benefit for Sammy would be the money.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It would also give Sega the benefit of being a console developer again.
True.
They could try to do some more weird things with hardware peripherals and stuff that they've really slowed down on a ton since the Dreamcast. During the Genesis and the Saturn and the Dreamcast, there was always weird hardware peripherals and add-ons and weird controllers and shit like that obviously they've not done at all since then, really. So if they were suddenly the hardware developer, that could potentially, I doubt we would see a return to it, but it's more likely then.
So are there any signs that it's going to happen? Obviously, Microsoft has dismissed these rumors several times, but it's always very strategically phrased.
Yeah.
We're not making any major announcements right now, today, at this time,
at this event, regarding this company.
Yeah. But you, to be fair, that you see that kind of corporate speak constantly. Anyway.
Definitely.
The internet assures us that there are Illuminati-style hidden messages in Microsoft and Sega's messaging over the last 5 years that confirm it will happen.
Yeah, it's hilarious to look at some of these fucking batshit nutso like images of tweets and shit where they're like, if you look at all the first letters in this line, it spells Microsoft, which is really close.
It is estimated, and this is really the big thing, that Microsoft has over $125 billion in spare cash reserves.
Yes.
And that's the important thing to note, because a lot of these big companies like Sony and stuff, they don't have cash.
Right. They have assets.
They have assets. They're huge companies with tons and tons of assets and income streams,
right?
But they don't just have a gargantuan Scrooge McDuck vault of cash,
right?
And Microsoft keeps one,
yes,
for some fucking reason.
Well, they're not the only ones. Apple and Amazon also have Scrooge McDuck vaults filled with
obviously.
cash.
Well, I feel like Apple and Amazon have Scrooge McDuck vaults almost as like just an accident. They're like, "Oops, we weren't catching all the money in a bucket for a couple seconds, and now we have a Scrooge McDuck vault." Like they just point something the wrong direction for a minute and then suddenly accrue that.
And suddenly there's a duck leaping into gold coins again.
They're like, you can't do that.
That's not how physics work.
So obviously they very much could do it.
Now, just this last week, they dropped another, $6 or $7 billion buying a company that does voice dictation software.
Yeah, just they've got tons of cash and they're willing to buy things that will benefit their current platform, as we've seen with the ZeniMax merger.
Right.
And I'll say this before we go any further.
That wasn't a merger. That was a purchase.
Pardon me, purchase. I'll say this before we go any further, and I'll probably say it again before the end of the show. I would be absolutely dumbfounded to learn that Microsoft isn't at least internally talking about buying Sega.
Yeah. And I assume other companies as well.
I think it would be downright idiotic for them not to be at least talking about it, maybe with Sammy, at least internally.
Right.
But let's talk about why it shouldn't happen.
Yes.
Lots and lots of Sega games have had huge audiences on other platforms. Yakuza was a big PlayStation exclusive for a long time.
For a very long time.
Bayonetta is pretty much exclusive to Nintendo.
Yeah, all the Atlas games have been PlayStation exclusives for a very long time. Well, not all of them, but at least the Persona series. Shin Megami Tensei has been Nintendo exclusive for a while there. So Sega has had heavy support of both Sony and Nintendo's platforms, and it would be really awful if people on those platforms suddenly lost access to all those games.
True. Also, there's the consolidation aspect of it's more big companies buying up everything smaller than them, which is
frustrating,
as we know, not generally great for a market long term.
Right.
And Microsoft has been really great lately. I would say of the big three game companies, it's very easy to say that Microsoft seems to be doing the best job right now.
They're certainly the most pro-consumer right now.
But Windows Vista wasn't that long ago.
It really
Games
wasn't.
for Windows wasn't that long ago.
Don't say that.
So, it's one of those things where it's going great right now with their current leadership. I love where Microsoft is. I love where Xbox is. But at the same time, I don't love Microsoft.
Yeah, I don't trust them at all.
Because they're a company and they're there to make money and they're going to do what it takes to make money. And if the thing that's going to make them money tomorrow is screwing me over, you bet your ass they will start screwing me over.
Someday they are going to Steve Ballmer this whole thing up again.
What, you mean do a bunch of coke and scream at us from a stage?
Yes.
And also, we all saw what happened to Rare, Ensemble Studios, FASA, Lionhead, etc. I mean, they seem to be better stewards of their properties now.
True.
But there's no guarantee that they're going to be a good steward of Sammy.
Or Sega.
Is, but really we're talking Sammy.
Right.
It's we don't know.
Well, the Sega division of Sammy.
Right. So we don't know. I mean, right now, again, and I feel like I feel like a Microsoft talking head saying it, but because they use the term stewards of gaming, you see that a lot lately.
Yeah.
which is kind of I don't know, a little ceremonious sounding.
Yeah.
But I do think of the three companies, they are the best stewards of the medium right now with backward compatibility and availability, and they seem to be making good strides, but we don't know how long that's going to last.
Right, exactly.
Games for Windows Live.
Yeah. And Ensemble Studios. That one still hurts.
Yeah. So let's talk about the current situation. Sega is still a strong supporter of the Xbox.
True.
They make Xbox 360, and Xbox Live Arcade games that are available via backwards compatibility on current platforms. The Xbox Marketplace, especially with the closer of the pre-PS4 PSN, is really the only modern place to enjoy a lot of Sega stuff.
Yeah.
Radiant Silvergun, it's on 360 and it's on Saturn. Period.
Well, yeah, but that wasn't Sega.
True, but it was a Saturn game,
right?
But there are lots of Saturn
Knights games. And Guardian Heroes. Well, that one's also Treasure,
right? But still, it's one of those games that it wasn't ported anywhere else. It was, yes, it's not a Sega first party game, but in your head, it's a Sega related game,
right?
It's one of Sega's big games on that platform, and it's not anywhere else except for Xbox, and it's available now. Like if you want to play Radiant, if you want, if someone was like, I want to play Virtua Fighter 2, I'd be like, play Yakuza. And then if they said I don't want to, then I'd be like, well, get it on Xbox. It's on Xbox. Fighting Vipers is on Xbox.
Daytona USA is on there.
Daytona's on it. I want to say Sega Bass Fishing is on there.
That's also in Steam too.
Oh, yeah, it is on Steam. I have it on Steam, which is on Windows, which is Microsoft. Dreamcast stuff seems to get around often enough, but
true.
It's still all Sega stuff is still all available on Microsoft's platforms. Granted, that is only because of Microsoft's dedication to backwards compatibility with the Xbox line.
Right.
But Sega is also supporting Game Pass. Several other titles are available day one on the service, which is
very nice.
A good relationship there.
Yeah.
Because Microsoft has made it very clear that while apparently becoming a PlayStation Now game requires some automated form and no human ever looks at it, they're making these Game Pass deals company to company, person to person.
Right. And I think Sony is starting to learn from that because they did make a big deal about Avengers coming to PS Now. So I think they are at least trying to negotiate some exclusives. I don't know if that was really the first one they should have gone for, though.
Yeah. And as we've mentioned ad nauseum many times, especially in the last few months, Sega supported the formerly exclusive Yakuza series to the Xbox in its entirety.
Yeah. All 8 games.
This is a capital B, capital D, big deal. Yakuza was desperately exclusive to Sony platforms.
Yeah.
It was, I went on GameFAQs forums just to read.
Yeah.
It was like a fucking joke. If someone was like, hey, you think they'll port Yakuza? Should I get a PlayStation and just wait? People are like, you're a moron. Like, it was like asking when they were going to port Mario Odyssey to the PlayStation. People are like, no, never in a million years.
Yeah, well, it felt like that for a very long time.
And here we are.
Yeah.
The PC division of Sega...
I have played through 4.5 Yakuza games on my Xbox now.
Yep. The PC division of Sega continues to focus mostly on Windows. Very few of their games get native Mac or Linux ports, which unfortunately is pretty common.
Right.
But many Sega subsidiaries are PC centric.
Yep.
With like Creative Assembly. And they're at least interested in releasing more PC games with, like their Atlas properties.
Right.
Seem to be, and they seem to want more.
And the internal Sega games, like all of the what used to be Sonic Team games, those all seem to be getting native PC ports really early or day one with their original console versions. And of course, Phantasy Star Online 2 got a good PC port not long ago. So
yes, in the US, isn't Phantasy Star only available on Microsoft platforms, Xbox and PC?
Currently, it is currently
on
limited.
anything else. So final thoughts. We've got it broken down into 3 categories, which is, are we reading too much into it?
Yes.
First of all, And I don't know, like the signs are there. And again, I'd be shocked if they weren't at least talking about it or have brought it up. They have a healthy relationship that goes back many years. And there are many ways both companies could benefit here.
Yeah. And it's hard to answer that without knowing if it's going to happen someday or if it's going to be shot down by Sega someday. But it does feel like there are some things that point to it. I'm not ready to make the pin board with the yarn going between pictures of Peter Moore and Seamus Blackley and shit.
That because I have a pin board.
Oh shit!
Oh, no. It's mostly He-Man action figures, but I put Peter Moore on. He's on there too.
Yeah, well, he's part of the He-Man universe now. But no, it's hard to say if we're definitively reading too much into it. But I do feel like it's at least worth speculating about.
Yes. The next question is, could it still happen?
Yeah.
And what would that look like? And I feel like if Microsoft buys Sega, then I don't see them stopping production of games on other consoles.
Certainly not early on, no.
If anything, I could see them using it as a boon, like such and such new game is out on multiple platforms. It's on Game Pass right now, but buy it wherever you want. And with that in mind, again, I really think it would be boneheaded for them to not be at least considering it.
Especially if Microsoft really is, like so many people are speculating, trying to transition to Xbox as a service instead of Xbox as a piece of hardware that you buy. Yeah. I could easily see them using Sega as their foot in the door to publish more games on Nintendo and Sony platforms.
Absolutely. And the Game Pass gives them such leverage and such wiggle room that they can come out and say, yeah, this is on every platform, and it's a first-party game that we own because we bought Sega.
Yeah.
It's free on Game Pass, and they still get to look good. They get to have their cake and eat it too.
Right.
Because then everyone who wants the game on PlayStation can still go buy it, and they still get that money.
Right. And they could also use that, just like they could use Bethesda as a backdoor to get some of their existing first-party games like Forza or Halo or something onto those other platforms, because those other companies, Bethesda and Sega, already have good relations with those other platform holders.
Yeah. And then finally, would it necessarily be a good thing?
Well...
I like where Microsoft is right now. I like how they're handling things
today.
Yes, but and as much as I am invested in the Xbox ecosystem, and I want to see all of Sega's games on the Xbox exclusively, I personally want that. Yes, because I don't have a PlayStation 5 and I don't plan to get one.
Right.
But I also would prefer companies to remain as independent as possible.
Yes.
Even though Sega's not really been independent since 2003.
Right. I mean, they are technically a division of Sammy. And we saw a lot of consolidation, especially of the Japanese game industry, between 2000 and today. Yeah. We were actually talking about it unrelated in the Discord this morning about how what used to be different Japanese companies are all these new companies that have two old Japanese companies' names and their new name
smushed together.
Yeah. You got Sega Sammy, you got Square Enix, you got Bandai Namco, you got Tecmo Koei. I feel like I'm forgetting one. There's so friggin' many of them.
Yeah.
But we've seen all this consolidation, and I don't know if all of it's been good, but the cost of game development has gone up so much that it might be necessary.
I feel like it's, the question of, is it necessarily a good thing? It's kind of a misnomer, because the answer is, of course, it's not a good thing.
No.
But is it preferable to the company dissolving?
Right.
Because in general, that's the alternative.
Yeah. If our alternatives are things continue as they are today or they merge, then no, I'd probably rather they remain the way they are today.
Yeah.
But if it becomes a point where it's, does Sega go away or do they get gobbled up by somebody? Today, I'd rather that somebody be Microsoft of the available choices.
Right. Absolutely.
Because there's not too many other people that have the kind of money to bail out Sega at the moment that I really want to be involved in bailing out Sega.
Yeah.
So
Tencent.
Yeah, you got
They could bail out
Tencent.
Sega.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
You got Activision Blizzard. You got
Yep.
You got Apple, Google, Amazon, Facebook.
Oh my God. Could you imagine if Google had bought Sega to be like Stadia, their big Stadia thing, and then they killed Stadia like they have?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
That'd be so sad.
If they had just been like, Stadia is basically the Dreamcast 2, and then they immediately killed all internal game development, that'd have been devastating.
Anyway, I think that's about as much as we can speculate on the matter. You know, obviously, I bought a Series X. I like the Xbox. I'd love to see every Sega game. I want every Persona game, every Yakuza game, everything. I want all of it on the platform I bought.
I also want every game on every platform. That's how I am.
True. Yeah, that's fair. You know, if we're in a pie in the sky world, I want everything to play everything anyway. Yes, you should get all the Yakuza games on your Switch. Yes, the Persona games should come to Xbox.
Right.
Yes. Because exclusivity is a marketing gimmick.
Yes, and also
that's what it is.
Games should be released like movies where you don't have to worry about what brand of player you have. You can just put in your game and you play it. And I'm still upset that we haven't reached that point yet.
Yeah.
But
also, they should be free, and they should come with little cupcakes that you can eat while you play them, and a little beer helmet, and
free He-Man action figures.
And free He-Man action. Everyone gets a Man-at-Arms with your new copy of Yakuza Like a Dragon 2.
Can I not get a Man-at-Arms?
No, you can't. You got to take it, and you're going to like it. Anyway, thank you for listening to our show. If you liked what you heard, then you're welcome. And... And we have a Patreon at patreon.com/Retro Warriors, where you can get Talking Wizards, which is a show that
also happens. Yeah.
And this episode was brought to you by the following people: a huge Earthbound fan excited to try it for the first time,
Adam Williams,
Chris,
Dadcore,
Five Flags Great Adventure.
Oh, they lost a flag. I know what food chat means, but I'll never tell.
John Fry,
Leo Lobato,
Michael Cabetti,
and Nick M.
are all the wonderful patrons we want to thank for making this very weird episode possible. And you can be one of them at our Patreon if you want. And you can also rate and review the show on your podcast aggregator of choice. We're back on the Googles.
Yay.
So if they have a rating system, I don't imagine that it works. But if they have one, you can do it.
If we get enough Patreon subscribers, we're going to make a new Patreon goal of, if we make enough money, we'll send Justin to school so he'll stop being so awkward in these segues.
I don't know that you can teach that. I feel like if there was a school for that, they would make me leave immediately.
You would not pass the admission exam.
They'd be like, you gotta go. And I'd be like, okay, I have a Patreon. They'd be like, just go. Just get out. You know where you should go? To my Patreon. Anyway, thank you for listening. We'll be back next week. And as always,
let us cling together.